7, which is the housing revenue account, business plan and budget options. And again, Councillor Westwood to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. This paper has already been taken through scrutiny committee, who scrutinised and commented on the paper but had no specific recommendations for change, and also taken to Cabinet, who noted most of the paper but also approved the budget options detailed at Appendix 2 of the paper as a basis for consultation to inform the February budget setting. The paper, in ideal circumstances, would have come to this committee prior to scrutiny, but the scheduling of the committees did not allow this to happen. However, we would like to seek your view on the paper, including the budget options detailed in Appendix 2, and these will be taken into account when preparing the February budget paper. I'll do a short introduction to the paper, set the scene, and then I and the officers will be happy to answer any questions you may have. So the budget for the previous financial year of 2024-25 was set against a background of high interest rates and designed to tackle inflationary pressures. CPI inflation has since fallen and reached 1.7% at September 2024, below the Bank of England's target of 2%. However, this does not mean that costs have fallen. It means that the pace of increase has slowed down and key cost drivers to the HRA, such as energy and building materials, continue to remain significantly high. The main cost pressures come from the following 5 areas. Firstly, continuing inflationary building supply and construction pressures, which are now baked in and continue to increase broadly in line with inflation this financial year. Secondly, the capital cost of maintaining the existing housing stock at Decent Homes standard. The increased cost of repairs and maintenance following the determination earlier in the year found that cumulative RPI had not been applied in line with contract requirements. This increase, combined with the increasing demand for repairs, is driving an increase in repair and maintenance costs of approximately £1.1 million per annum. Thirdly, capital financing. Interest rates are a key cost driver in the HRA business plan, and as of the 31st of March 2024, the HRA had a capital financing requirement of £215 million, with a proportion of this debt needing to be refinanced over the next 15 years. Interest on borrowing remains high and is not expected to decrease significantly in the near term. Fourthly, new homes viability. Stubbornly high Public Works Loan Board interest rates also mean new homes viability remains challenging. As a result of the ongoing high costs, the Council has followed a strategy of acquisition and as a result has been able to add to its housing supply between 2024-5 and 2027-28 through targeted acquisitions and the acquisitions of Section 106 affordable homes. And for completeness, the agreement was given at the last Cabinet meeting last week to move forward with the purchase of 146 affordable homes in Kings Barton. Looking at the revenue side, the Council must set its rents in line with the rent standard and central government's regulators' social housing's rent setting guidelines. The current basis of rent setting is CPI plus 1% for 2025-26. The budget options contained in this report support the Council's commitment to increase investment in customers' homes to go greener faster, to deliver 1,000 new homes programme by 2032-33, and to deliver an improved customer service and experience for repairs and maintenance. If no action were taken to address these pressures, there will be insufficient resources within the business plan to deliver a balanced budget over the 30-year planning period, whilst also delivering against our policy objectives. A savings target of £2 million per annum has been established to mitigate the pressures outlined above, and officers have been meeting on a regular basis during the year to identify and quantify potential opportunities. In addition, we will maintain our approach to service charges that those who use the service pay for it, but we will dampen any increase in service charge increase whether above a set percentage or amount, which is detailed in the paper. To achieve these policy objectives and set a viable and sustainable HRA business plan, the budget options identified for consideration will be further developed and will be subject to consultation with customers. In addition, these budget options have been reviewed by the TACT board, and their feedback will also be taken into consideration. The TACT board were broadly supportive of all proposed actions. The proposed options following development and consultation will be decided by Cabinet when the Housing Revenue Account budget is considered in February 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Westwood. Councillor Horrell would like to make an observation on this paper.
Chair, thank you. I had actually made my points at previous committees, so all the questions have already been raised, so I won't take your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, as Councillor Westwood has said, this paper unfortunately has already gone through scrutiny and Cabinet, and therefore I think extended questioning of the actual body of the report probably is not in our best interest in terms of time at least. So what I'd like to do is give an opportunity if there are observations or questions that you'd like to make, but very sort of short. About the body, but then, as Councillor Westwood indicated, I think the majority of our input could well be spent on Appendix 2, where the options are there in terms of the budget options that are available. So, firstly, are there any questions around the actual body or the actual sort of content? Councillor Murphy.
Yes, and it's just a question on the impact on individuals for the CPI +1 increase in rent, because actually cumulatively on 1 year that's a small increase, but cumulatively over time, if that's what's budgeted in, it will affect some individuals. But it's just to have an idea across those who are paying that, who are not affected because it's paid, they get it through benefits, and who is actually taking more money out of their earnings, and therefore they may have some hardship.
Okay, so if I understand your question, it's about what happens if people can't afford to pay the increased rent. Is that it?
It's if that increased rent is actually impacting them and therefore causing difficulty. Yes.
Okay, so the rent level that we set, it will be increased, and we have a dedicated group of people that are responsible for collecting our rent, and those and the tenant sustainment team do a sterling job of working with anybody who cannot afford to pay their rent. As a council, we don't have the policy of ejecting people because they can't pay their rent. This is not a private rental organisation. We will do our utmost to keep people in their homes, and so we will work collaboratively with anybody who struggles to pay their rent, and we will help them manage their finances. We will work with them to understand that they've effectively claimed all the allowances that they're allowed to claim, and any other method that we can to help them achieve carry on with their tenancy in our council homes. So it's not our policy to eject anybody on those circumstances. There are areas and reasons why we will terminate lease agreements, but if somebody's struggling with rent, they get our absolute help to actually achieve and pay the rent. Mr. Hendy, do you have anything, or Mrs. Knight, do you have anything to add to that?
Through you, Chairs, as Councillor Westwood said, our proud boast is we don't evict people on the basis of rent arrears. We work with households to make sure we can maximise their income. As Councillor Westwood said, we have a tenancy sustainment team, which makes sure that people can claim all the benefits they're eligible to claim. And clearly nobody likes to pay more in terms of their housing costs, but it's a national administered benefit system that assesses people's income against certain criteria, so that if the impact of a rent increase means they have less disposable income on the back of that, then we'll move them closer in towards being able to apply and receive for universal credit housing element to help pay their rent or housing benefit if they're in sheltered accommodation.
And then just, do you have any feel for what proportion of people are having their rents paid in full, and how many are actually in this position where they'd be having to at least think about it?
We'd have to check, but I think it's about 2/3 of all our customers are on some form of benefit, either full or partial benefit.
Okay.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you. On page 28, we refer to the budget and effectively have ignored the impact of the rise in national insurance. Now, the trouble with that is that may be true if you're very lucky and you get all the money back for the council, but it's not going to be true for everybody that supplies us with services or goods. Basically, that's going to push up the cost of all labour in every firm. We've already seen that every indication is that inflation is going up as a result of that. And I just think that this budget runs a risk, but our figures for repairs and renewals will actually be far higher than we have anticipated, simply because of the effect on the building industry of the massive increase in their national insurance costs. I.e., for anybody earning £30,000, it's costing their employer more than £1,000 extra already.
Thank you.
Just hand Charlotte first go at that. We have a contract in place for the repairs and maintenance of our buildings, and we have agreed prices in place for those repairs. And those are the prices that we've baked into this budget, those forecast and anticipated prices based on the volume that we expect to be passed through next year.
Contract coming up, it's going to be a massive increase simply because the employers won't be able to afford, the contractors won't do it at the price that they were.
The repairs and maintenance procurement paper and contract was debated both through scrutiny and through cabinet over the last week, and there is the risk register within there, and there is the clear risk that the repairs and maintenance prices will increase when we agree and take forwards a new policy. So they're very clearly identified, and our procurement process will be very careful to understand the impact of that once we start seeing some of the tender bids. Now, so you're really asking a question about future pricing, not the pricing for this next budget year, because that's baked in. And we have made levels of assumptions in our 30-year plan going forwards in terms of the cost for repairing and maintaining our housing. But the proof of the pudding will be once we enter into negotiation and tendering with the people that wish to take over our repairs and maintenance business. And I like my other piece to this, which is I would hope to see a level of savings coming out of a new contract with a repairs and maintenance contractor, and I would call them a partner now going forwards. We will be having a significantly increased amount of data on the what is actually repaired and the costs we're paying. We will have negotiated pricing on a different manner to the current contract, which is all laid out in the repairs and maintenance paper. And we are looking for innovation going forwards. We are investing in our homes to retrofit them to make them more energy efficient. We have a proactive repairs program for roofs and windows, etc. And the quality of the homes going forwards will be better than the quality of homes that come behind us. So I would be looking through the new repairs and maintenance contract to see some savings coming forwards, as opposed to that will counteract obviously the price increases that are going forwards. And furthermore, we have allocated within our budget inflation on these figures going forwards through the 30 years. So Mr. Hendy, anything additional to add there?
Thank you. Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. Just clarification I'm looking for is on page 29, we talk about interest on borrowing. We have some like 215 million of total capital financing requirement. Out of that, 159 is with PWLB at fixed interest rate. Further saying somewhere that we are out of this 100 million, we are going to refinance it. Well, does that mean our total interest burden of 5.5 million will be reduced in the years to come?
Okay, so the way that the plan has been put together, the 30-year plan, is to factor in the refinance of the debt, where we know we've got to refinance at the prevailing rates of interest, which are in excess of 5%. I don't know the exact numbers, 5 point something percent. And so that is already baked into the calculations that we've got. But what we've also done is, for the first time ever, is to, following in the years 2033 onwards, is to start repaying levels of debt. Right. So at present, we are planning to start repaying back some of the £215 million to reduce our interest costs and overall debt.
Thank you. There's one more point I wanted to raise and congratulate really the council for that. Is I'll go to page 31. Some interesting numbers in terms of what we are buying. I think by the year, probably come next 25, 26, we'll have totally 637 properties, which is a fantastic achievement if you're going for 1,000 houses by year 2031, 32. That's brilliant. I thought going for buying new properties is the right way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, those are the houses that are cited. I mean, we're entering into contract negotiations, as I said, with 146 of them. So we've agreed in principle to buy them. We have, well, if you look back at my cabinet committee housing meeting, available on YouTube, it's it's a good seller. There was a housing update there, and we listed out all of the schemes that we saw as a high probability of being able to land in the period up to 27, 28, and that's where those numbers are coming from. So these are houses that we're pretty confident that we'll be able to bring on board. They're not, bought yet, but they're in a pipeline to be bought, and we're confident that that's the direction of travel and the sorts of numbers we're going to get to.
Councillor Morris.
As a flippant answer, yes, I can. I am having a piece of work done. It was partially presented at the last Cabinet Committee Housing, which has got a map of Winchester District, and it has on that the numbers by ward, and so I get it down to ward level, roughly. I'm having another piece of work done on that to overlay the demand by ward as well. So you'll see that coming forwards. Probably at my next Cabinet Committee Housing meeting.
Councillor Morris.
Yeah, my question is regarding the acquisition strategy, because I often walk through Kings Barton, and I've never heard a bystander say what a rich variety of different types of housing there is here. So when we're buying houses in a place such as Kings Barton, can you assure me that we do purchase a variety, particularly ground floor single-story flats for those who are elderly or unable to use stairs? Because my concern is, obviously, that is where some of the demand for our housing is going to come from, and we have an equality duty to make sure that we provide housing for those people. Thank you.
Okay, so the houses that we are planning to procure from Kings Barton are in 3 different phases. They are a mixture of 1 bed, 2 bed, 3 bed properties, and they're a mixture of affordable and shared ownership across those 3. Now, I don't have the detail that you're asking for, and I'd look at Mr. Hendy and ask if you had that detail. at this stage. So that will be something that we can bring forwards once we've gone a little bit further with the negotiations, I suspect.
If I could add, I mean, members, if you are interested in the detail, it is included in the report to Cabinet last time round. It's an exempt appendices. If you have access to that, it gives the detail of the units there, which phase by phase. So that information does exist if you're interested in that.
Councillor Moore.
Probably not a major part of this budget, but the thing about the sewage works and recovering the cost. Now, 367 of those houses are private houses. Are we planning to recover the full capital costs of those upgrades or just the ongoing running costs? And if we recovering the capital costs, that could come as a shock to some of those people, I'm sure.
We are planning to recover the cost of operating those plants. And I will ask Mr. Hendy if he can just confirm that that is the case. It is. So we will be planning to recover the operating costs for those plants. So there will be investment in those plants. We need to invest in those plants for two reasons. One is we need to reduce the operating costs of those plants. We need to modernise them, and to be fair to the tenants that are connected, that we provide a good value service. And secondly, we need to improve the water quality that's dribbling out the other end. Yeah.
Right. Any further questions, or shall we? Okay. So I'm suggesting we now move on to Appendix 2, the options that have been presented on page 40 onwards, and ask questions or make comments on those particular things, which Councillor Westwood will then incorporate into the work that goes forward to next year's Cabinet. Councillor Westwood.
Just to correct you, Councillor Westwood will not incorporate it. The officers will incorporate it.
Corrected. Thank you, Councillor Westwood. Councillor White.
It's about the service charges for cost recovery review. I mean, I think at scrutiny they requested to see those service charges, but I just wondered what the review actually will entail. I mean, is it going to see where costs can be reduced before they're recovered? Is there going to be some kind of consultation with the people involved?
Okay, so many different ways of answering that question. So the service charges for a number of our homes were capped when inflation was significantly high, and they were capped at 7.7%, I think it was, or 7%. And therefore we were recovering below the full cost of services, and we're looking to recover back now up to the full cost of services. So that's what that activity is about. We also want to provide people with the services that they want, and that we provide the good value services. So these are discussions that will go on through our tenant engagement process and through groups like the consumer standards groups, where we will talk to people about the service charges and the services we provide, and in some instances at individual scheme level where that is appropriate and required. And it's interesting that I'm getting people come to me and asking to pay more service charge because they want better facilities in certain places, whether that be better upkeep of the grounds or other facilities within the homes area. So it is a multi-dimensioned thing, but the thrust here is to move back to full cost recovery of those service charges.
Good. Councillor Ashwell.
We're talking about IT contingency budget reduction of 400K because we are farming out the work IT solution to the suppliers for the contract. Are we in that case, is there any need for their IT solutions interfacing with the council's IT? Is there any challenges in that, or that already is being looked after and taken care of?
As a former IT consultant, there are always challenges integrating computer systems, as you well know. Looking at the budget number, it was we put a contingency of £2 million in the previous year budget. What we're saying is that we want to reduce that by 400,000 because we are baking into our R&M procurement tender the supply of an IT solution to manage our front-end customer interaction that we will not need to build into our own systems. So we've reduced it there. Clearly, there will be the need to view and manage the data, and we will own the data. But that's what that number is about.
I have a follow-up question on the same point, which is that if the suppliers are now going to be handling the repair and maintenance of their IT, surely that's an ongoing saving as well as a one-off saving.
Yes, remember that all of these options on here are not necessarily one-off savings. We're looking for an annualized saving, and we have to make annual savings, so that will be a reduction. There will be a reduction in our IT spend going forwards because some of it's elsewhere, absolutely. And then it gets more complicated because that's baked into the R&M procurement contract price and the tender prices that we're going to get. So it's quite difficult to unmix it at that point.
Just a question in terms of new homes. There's two items there in terms of reducing the consultancy budget and also deletion of vacant posts. First question about the deletion of those vacant posts is what proportion of the headcount is covered by the deletion of those posts? How significant of a reduction to the team is that going to be?
Mr. Hendy, can you help with that point?
As a percentage of headcount, I'm struggling a bit. I think it could be something like 10% because it's 1 out of about 10 members of staff, but don't quote me on that. But it's a vacant post, so it's not something it's funded, it's vacant. It's not something that's a person that's in post that's doing something at the moment. Sort of.
Okay. I mean that deletion is 120k per year. Is that funding for that one head that you're talking about, or is it multiple posts? One. Also, the question in terms of obviously the rebalancing of acquisition of homes from building to purchase. What sort of duration do we think that is likely to continue? I mean, obviously it's subject to external market forces and interest rates, I'm sure. But do we got an idea of when our building program might recover, or are we in this situation for an extended period of time now?
That's probably a better question, best directed at Rachel Reeves.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. The item with regards to employing quantity surveyors, so obviously the sort of the saving presented is kind of net of employment costs as the item calls out. If there's £100,000 worth of potential savings there, has any consideration been given to employing multiple quantity surveyors, or does the opportunity simply not scale as such?
Right, so the point with the quantity surveyor there is to drive those savings because we want to ensure the quality of the work that is delivered. I guess, Mr. Hendy, that if we see the value coming out of that and we see more value, then we may well employ more, but it's going to be on a value basis. So at the moment, that's for one quantity surveyor.
It's the net cost after employing one quantity surveyor, and we don't think it's scalable. It's basically concentrating on the larger pieces of work that are coming in and challenging those. No, we wouldn't expect that we can start employing an army of QSs and get the benefit off the back of it, because it's just targeted on big spend, not the recurring small levels of spend that's coming through from our contractors.
Councillor Morris.
Quick question on the discontinuing the tenants' incentive budget to move into smaller properties, which is expected to be a saving of 65,000, I think. That's on the assumption that the discretionary housing payments will be significantly less than that. Do you have an idea? But if they are significant, that might not be much of a saving at all. So how much are we currently giving in discretionary housing payments at the moment which may increase? Thank you.
Chair, there's two things there. This is a payment that should be an incentive to encourage people to move. The evidence exists at the moment. There's a lot of people move and then get paid afterwards, and it's not actually acting as an incentive. The incentive for people to move to smaller homes because it's cheaper for them to run smaller homes, or there's some other reason why they need to move to a smaller home. Discretionary housing payments are available to help people with the cost of moving. So hopefully they won't be disadvantaged in terms of not being able, if they were using this perhaps incentive payment to cover the cost of the move, then by using DHPs, we can make sure that the cost of the move is covered, but they just will not be getting an incentive over and above once they've moved as well.
I'd like to ask a question about the training budget. It implies that, or states that the training budget is regularly underspent. Is there a reason for that underspend, that we have got, sort of staff that aren't being trained? Is there problems with releasing staff? Is there any issues why that budget hasn't been spent in the past?
We haven't any direct issues around that, but we are aware that we put lots of people through their professional qualifications this year. But obviously, with the introduction of the regulator for housing, then we do need to look at upskilling our staff, and there will be more training opportunities there. There's I can't come up with a concrete reason as to why it's been underspent this year.
Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. Reduce tenant involvement, and that leads to about 40k saving. But at the moment, we do interact with tenants quite intensely. We do the surveys, we have TACT meetings taking place. Where are we reducing this interaction to make those savings at 40k? Thank you.
It's just to reassure members, this isn't any reduction in the budget that is based in terms of staff engaging with our customers, the very work you've just mentioned in terms of TACT, consumer groups. This is a budget that has been used to fund additional activity in terms of engaging with our customers. So it might be in a specific sheltered housing scheme or things like that. So what we will be doing is making sure that the range of budgets that exist in the housing revenue account are used to support that sort of engagement. So there still is a level of funding left in the tenant engagement budget after that, and we'll be looking at some of the other budgets, some of the welfare budgets, to make sure that overall we can address all the requirements that we need to in relation to engagement tenants. But just to reassure you, this doesn't mean that it will impact on the day-to-day work of the staff engaging with customers.
Morris.
I like asking questions. The damp and mould in-house service is a nil cost proposal as far as I can tell, but also it says it will be costed and presented as part of the February budget. So is it a nil cost because it hasn't been budgeted yet, or how are we going to be providing the service with no cost? I'm very impressed if we can manage that. How is that going to be done?
Mr. Hendy.
Chair, the reason it's in as a nil cost proposal is because we've looked at all the work we've done in a 12-month period in terms of damp and mould work. So, for example, mould washes to our customers' homes. We've looked at the cost of that because it's all been paid by to contractors at the moment, and sort of reverse engineered and said, well, taking that sum of money that we pay contractors, could we use that money to employ 2 members of staff in a van and all the materials, so they actually go out and do the mould washes and that lower level of work to customers' homes to address damp and mould. And at the moment, we think there's a business case to justify it. It'd be better for us to employ our own staff to do that work rather than to employ contractors to do it. And the advantage of that is it gives a lot more flexibility with those staff and a lot more immediate response to our customers than relying on contractors. But as the report says, we'll bring that forward to the February budget report that Cabinet will consider with more detail on that business case to justify it.
If I can add to that, it probably helps us deliver against the statutory timelines for dealing with damp and mould cases that we need to adhere to.
So that isn't really part of the money saving idea in front of us. It's another proposal which is happening along at the same time.
Through you, Chair, in February, it might even save some money. We found 414 cases of work that we did last year, which was basic damp and mould washes in our customers' homes. So if you equate the average cost of that compared to the cost of us doing that work ourselves, it may be economic for us to do it. Therefore, there may be a small saving, but we don't know that at the moment. That's why it's in there, and we'll bring back the detail in February.
That's Ashwell.
It's just a clarification. I don't understand what voice scale in contract 25-26 half year means. It's on page 41, fourth item from the bottom.
This is some software that we are not using, basically. So we're going to terminate the contract for the software.
Shall I answer that, Chair? It's a piece of software that it uses, in effect, AI and to identify customers who may be at risk of going into arrears. Our arrears performance is very effective at the moment, and we basically are not using this software to enhance our service in that respect. And therefore, we think we don't need this software. Therefore, we won't be continuing with the contract and therefore give up the £20,000.
Okay, if there's no further questions, do we have any debate on this? I mean, obviously, recognising again that the paper's already gone through both scrutiny and cabinet, our contribution in terms of debate is probably worthwhile concentrating on those items that we just reviewed in terms of Appendix 2. So really just to, summarise any of those aspects that you'd like to pass back through Councillor Westwood and the officers. Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. It's fantastic, the amount of saving that we are seeing out of this work that you guys done, about 2 million, is in the right direction. And if it can be, at least if we can do 90% of it, it will help us towards the budget that we are looking for the HRA. And I must congratulate officers for coming up with those numbers. And obviously the numbers that you're putting together, there'll be some contingencies in it. So even if it's not exactly 1.8 million, 1.8 million, at least we'll be very close to it. So I fully support what we're putting it together here. Thank you.
Councillor White.
I think the policy reviews are going to be important. The repairs recharge policy, the voids contracts provision, the disrepair process review. I think by going through those, and if it's very data driven, I think there'll be perhaps even more efficiencies that could be made.
Thank you. Councillor Chelmsford.
Just briefly, I think it's reassuring that, whilst primarily kind of Appendix 2 is focused on revenue savings, clearly officers have also been considering kind of how we get value in other ways. It's not just about saving money. So I think the mould, example was a good example there of actually there are other benefits to doing things differently than purely just the financial.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to echo that in terms of obviously the work that's been done to identify those savings. I'm just wondering, maybe this question rather than debate, whether that then is being continued. Is there, sort of further work that can be being done to investigate further sort of opportunities for making savings?
We're always investigating for other opportunities to make savings, Chair. And, it is a big team that works on this. And so we are slowly improving many aspects of it. And these are ones we've identified at the moment. And I'm sure there'll be further savings to come.
Right, thank you very much. I think that concludes our, sorry, Councillor Morris.
I just like to thank the cabinet member and the officers. This is generally a painless proposal to save a huge amount of money with very little hardship being incurred on our residents. The one potential fly in the ointment is the cost of meals at residents at Chesil Lodge being increased slightly. And I would just hope reassurance that that's not going to have a significant negative impact on them. But that's, as far as I can see, the only downside of this entire proposal. So generally fantastic. I'm very, very excited by this. Thank you.
Right, well, I think that concludes our discussion and debate on that paper. Thanking again Councillor Westwood and the officers for bringing both that and the Disabled Facilities Grant to this committee. And it just leads us to note the current work programme, which I think for the last meeting at the moment we've got the one item, Matthew. So I think we'll probably add a few more to that before it comes around next year. But that means that we are finishing at just after 8:30. So thank you all very much for your attendance and contributions. Thanks again.